Hi, this is Marky Sparky with Plug the Receptacle, and today I'm going to share with you a little bit of information on receptacles and some basics that you need to understand before you even get to wiring one of these bad boys up. So let's talk about that right now. So this is your garden variety receptacle, of course. You've got your two mounting screws above and below. That's your typical, that's what you're going to expect to see on pretty much every plug. Now you'll notice this one's square. This one's called a Decora style switch and plug. You can get switches and plugs to fit the same plate. But this is a Decora. The old style has two separate cutouts and it's almost like a figure eight. But this is the newer style. So every receptacle today sold in the stores pretty much has three prongs. You have the left, the right, and the bottom one. These three things are entirely different items, and this is important. It's imperative that you wire up the receptacle properly. Otherwise, this can be a dangerous situation. So you'll notice this one here has a very wide slot. That's called the neutral. That is the return conductor. So that is not hot typically. That is typically just your return conductor. The smaller stripe or the smaller slot here is typically your hot. So that would be your black or your red, depending on how many wires you have in your loom or your whatever it is you're wiring. That is your hot. That's the conductor that will be energized. That's the dangerous slot right there. This one here is your ground. That is the safety. That's the ground that is typically connected through the plug to the junction box that you're connected to, and it's all bonded to your household panel and up through the utility typically. This is bonded throughout the system, but they call it a ground, okay? And you'll notice on the back, there's some key elements here. Okay, as I said before, the wide slot is your neutral. You'll notice the screws are sort of silver colored, silver. And the hot, the small stripe here, or the small slot, they're brass. So you'll notice silver and brass. That means two different things. So what that means is the copper is always your energized, always your current carrying conductor, your copper, and your brass is always your neutral on a receptacle. The green is always the ground. That represents safe. So when it's green, it's safe. And that's kind of what that means. So when you wire your bare conductor, your bare copper, you're going to wire it around the green, and that essentially takes it to the ground point. Your copper or your brass, depending on how you like your flavor, is going to this one, and that's energizing your hot. That's what's giving you power to your toaster or to your, any kind of device you have in the household. This energy comes through here. Now your return to go back to the panel comes to the wide. So that's the basic fundamentals. Today we're not going to wire that for you. I'm just going to explain that. There's another thing that you need to know about receptacles like this, and that is there's these little tabs. You'll notice these little tabs here on the side. They connect these two together. Same thing here. These are connected via this tab. So there's these copper underneath, this copper plate, and there's a copper plate over here. But this ties that all together. Now there are scenarios where you need to actually cut that tab. Usually you leave them alone. You don't touch that. You just leave them. So you wrap your wire under either one of these and it'll energize both. And if you wrap your wire on the top or the bottom and you leave that alone, that tab, it'll energize both. So if you wrap one wire in, for example, that will energize both of these top and bottom together. If you cut this tab, wherever the wire is you bring, that will only energize that side. So you ask yourself, why would you do that? Well, that's if you have a kitchen receptacle, for example. In some of the older codes and the old kitchen installations, you would sometimes have what they called split receptacles. So you would keep this in place. The neutral, typically you would only have the one neutral coming in, but often you can have a red and a black, or black and red, whichever. And to save yourself, if you don't cut this tab, you can actually get this to poof, short out. So if you have a split receptacle like you have often in some of the older homes where you have split and you have actually two circuits on your countertops, you would bring in, like I said, a black and a red, and then you would have to cut this tab. Otherwise, you would have a short circuit and the breaker would trip. If you're having a new installation and this is a problem, and somebody puts a plug on the counter, somebody's replugging this, and all of a sudden the breakers keep tripping, that's one of the first places I always look, is if they forgot to cut this tab. Because if you have split receptacles, or what they call split receptacles, and you have a red and a black wired up here, but you don't cut that, that can cause a short circuit. That is another key element in this installation. Rarely would you ever cut the neutral. Almost never would you ever cut the neutral tab, but it is available to do so under the same circumstances. So that essentially is the ins and outs of your garden variety receptacle. Well, thanks again, guys, for stopping by. I really appreciate that. I hope you learned something about plugs and receptacles, and make sure that above all else, you exercise extreme safety and caution when doing any of this type of work at home. Thanks again, everybody. Make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below. I have a small channel right now, but I'd love to get a boost. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.